Appreciate it. Hey, everybody, how we doing? Oh, come on. Somebody just ate lunch or ate too much. Let's try that again. How we doing? Good. We're going to talk about that question here in a little bit more later, but it is good to be here. I'm on the coast, but it's good to be here at SHOT Show. I am having a blast going through here. My list of what anybody wants to give me is very much lengthening. My wife says that I can't have any of it. So now, for most of you in this room, though, you'll understand what I'm about to say. I picked up a gun that I was looking at. Sean, it was pretty nice. I liked it. And I looked at my wife, my beautiful bride of 37 years, is sitting right over here, Lisa, and she's been with me. And I looked at her and I said, I need this. She looked at me and said, why? I said, because I just need it. She said, what are you going to do with it? I said, it doesn't matter. I need it. And you know, that's the way life is sometimes. We find areas of what we need and what we want, and we find it in the middle. I'm here today before this panel and before you discussing something that means a great deal to me. And a great deal to me from the day that I took the oath of office to be the 12th Secretary of VA. And that was taking care of veterans. Somebody asked me one time, they said, well, what did the president tell you when he offered you the job? And I asked him a question. I said, Mr. President, what do you want me to do? And he looked at me and all President Trump said was take care of veterans. He said, that's all I want you to do. I said, well, that's an easy job. I said, because I love my veterans, and I said, being one myself, I said, we're going to do everything we possibly can to do that. What I found in this job is I came to the VA to a very bureaucratic, very overly broad department that intended to do good, but had gotten away from its main mission. It had really just gotten away from being what it should be. Now, we got a lot of veterans. I'm assuming we got veterans in the room today. Is that right? There we go. All right, let's just try this. Army's in the room? Oh, well, there we go. How about Air Force? There we go. Coast Guard. Oh, and not even at least one. Space Force, I'll give you a chance. Space Force, there we go. I don't know for most in Space Force, I don't know if I am or not. I'm in the Air Force, I don't know. Navy? Seabees, there we go. All right, and I'm leaving my last here as I come in. I say, I've done Army, Navy, Marines. If I don't get a bark out of Marines, there's a problem at that point. One of the best experiences I ever had in my life was when I was in the Navy Reserve as a chaplain. Of course, chaplains in the Navy go across Navy and Marines. I went to Camp Pendleton and was out with the FSSG unit. We were doing the fuel cell. They were practicing, and they were so proud that the chaplain came out and they said, "Chap, we got you a rack. We got you here in the tent. We're going to put you in the rack." And I said, "Well, I'm going to take you to my rack." So they took me to the rack, and I got there, and this little slick sleeve looked at me and said, "Chap, this is where you're going to be." And I looked at my rack, and it was like that, rolling downhill. I said, "I'll take it." That night I got in bed, took the little blanket that I had, I tied it on both ends. If I went, the whole thing was going. But they were so proud of it. Why don't I talk just about stories like that? Why do you talk about stories like that? It's because those are the things that actually mean and matter to us as we grow. As we grow older, as we lose contact with some that we may have had contact with before, as we begin this process, and for you coming in here today and sitting through this panel and sitting through me, and listening to suicide prevention, it tells me that there's a connection that needs to be made that's not being made right now. Now, I can talk about the VA in general, and we got a lot of different things that are going on in the VA, but the first thing that I did, I think actually affects the suicide issue almost as much as anything else that we do at the VA. And it was when I came in, I said there's going to be one thing different at the VA. If there's nothing else going to be different, there's going to be this one focus and one focus only, and that is the veteran comes first at the VA. We do not have a job. I got some of my VA employees here who I love dearly. I'm proud of them and what they do. You'll see them down on the floor. They're signing up people. They're helping people. Go see them and encourage them because they have a tough job trying to get people there. But I told them, I said, we do not have a job unless a veteran walks through the door. And beforehand, and really what I found out listening to veterans, because I don't stay behind my desk in Washington, D.C., I've traveled over 30 plus states, been in almost 70 facilities, and I talk to veterans at shows like this and everywhere, and I say, early on what I found is that people weren't being listened to. The VA was too worried about itself. The VA was too worried about us growing. how many employees we have, how many things are we doing. And what really just disturbed me, and I was a member of Congress, so I can speak bad about them if I wanted to, is that they only concerned about, well, how many employees have you got now, and how many are you doing this? And never asking the simple question that you as business owners and you working in nonprofits have to ask every day: are we being effective? If you can have 1 million people doing something but doing nothing, it's not helpful. We became a jobs program instead of a service organization that we were. I spent a year of my life digging into that detail. Said, how can we make it better for veterans? How do we make it better for that veteran who walks through the door? Because if I'm making it better for that veteran who walks through the door, then this statistic, which we're going to elaborate on later, becomes more and more obvious. We were spending, Todd is here with me, he's doing our suicide prevention program, leading it up. We're spending $588 million on suicide prevention. $588 million. And we had been doing that for several years prior. So let's just go ahead and say we were already in the billions. But yet when I came and I asked, what is the difference that we see? Where are we seeing us making progress? The only numbers that, and for some of you in this room, I'm not going to dispute the numbers. I'm not going to get into a back and forth. Whether you use 17, 21, 40, or whatever number you use, we're losing one too many veterans every day. But here was a number that stunned me. $588 million, and 60% of the veterans who chose death by suicide had never been in contact with a VA. Never been in contact with a VA. Now think about that for a second. The largest healthcare system in the world, basically, who only caters to veterans, the only people we can take is veterans, and yet 60% of those who felt there was no other way for them in life except to leave this life had no impact with us. And we were spending $588 million. It told me we had a problem. It told me that we liked talking to ourselves. It told me that we liked basically finding the ways that felt good to us, that moved our little metrics, but yet we failed. The basic metric is it actually reaching a veteran? Because if it's not reaching a veteran, I don't care how many good warm and fuzzies we feel, it's not doing what we're supposed to do. And I just happen to be one of them crazy guys from North Georgia that actually believes that government has a role and a purpose, but it has to have a focus. And at the VA, the only focus is veterans. So when we get off and talk about how many of this we're doing and how many people we have and how many buildings we made, all of it is irrelevant unless it comes back to the person who has served their country, raised their right hand, have earned the benefit. By the way, I'm pretty sick of it, and there may be media in this room, so you'll hear me say this right now. I'm tired of anybody in this country telling me that veterans are given stuff. They've not been given stuff. They've earned everything they've gotten. Now, as I'll also speak as one veteran to another, we don't always get all that we want. Not everybody's going to be 100%. Can I at least get one amen in the room? We'll deal with that one later. But what I am saying is that we've got to work together to do the only thing we do, and that is work to take care of veterans. So that's what we've done. That's what we've been doing. So we redid the entire suicide prevention program. We're working that right now. We're putting in, you'll see new ads. It's why I've decided that I believe, from my old, as you heard, I was a chaplain, and still a chaplain, by the way. I'm out in May, and it's only, 3.5 months and something days left till retirement. But chaplaincy is something I've had to deal with. I've had to be there when somebody comes to me or they call on that line late at night and say, I don't want to go on anymore. I had to sit in the desert with a kid who just got off the plane. And the security forces folks called me and said, we can't use this guy, Cap. Can you come talk to him? I went and talked to him. And he just arrived in country, and at that moment in time, his wife decides to tell him, I don't love you anymore, I'm divorcing you. I didn't know whether to get on the plane and go back at her or sit there and deal with him. But I had to deal with him. This is personal for me. I have a job in which we have 450,000 employees in the VA. We take care of almost 9 million veterans. Every day we're doing something to make it better, and yet every day I wake up and say, can I do more? Because every week it seems like I get a report on my phone that says another veteran has not just taken and chose death by suicide, many have done that on VA property. Now, one of the things I told Congress, and they weren't used to hearing this from a secretary of VA, a cabinet secretary, I told them, look, when we at the VA do it wrong, I'm going to tell you, hey, yeah, our bad, we'll fix it. But I said, you're also not going to lie about us. When we're doing it right, I'm going to tell you we are. And I said, you're not going to scare my veterans, you're not going to scare my employees. We can have honest conversations about what is the direction, how we do it, and how we need to do it, and how we can work with veterans. But the one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to deal in scare tactics. We're not going to do that anymore. Because at the end of the day, it's not the ones in the political arena that suffer. It is the veteran who can't get the care that they need. It's the veteran who feels like that they can't get that appointment. It's that veteran who feels like that nobody's listening to them anymore. It's that veteran who simply says, somebody listen to me. Now, the only way I know to deal with this is first to start off with you in this room. And that is to remind especially those that I just mentioned just a few moments ago when you talked about serving. All of you remember raising your right hand and swearing your oath to the Constitution and serving. And how many of you remember, no matter where you were from basic all the way to the time that you got out, no matter deployments and everything else, what was the constant thing? No man, no man, no man. Some of you will memorize it sometime. Do you know I got you a quick word here? Unfortunately, too many of us veterans forget that when the day we walk out and grab our DD-214, we think that's over. If we're going to actually start adjusting ourselves to a focus of helping veterans overcome the issues in their life and to where they get to the point where they don't take their own life, then we've got to remember that the oath you took on that day to leave nobody behind is the oath that you still have to the day you die, not to leave one of your buddies behind. You can't leave them anymore. I have a friend of mine who is a Medal of Honor recipient. And I don't think he would mind me telling you this story. Ro is a Afghanistan Medal of Honor recipient. He told me something the other day. We were talking in our office, and he was talking about how fat he still keeps in touch with the guys and folks that were in there when they were going through it. And he said they have that. How many of you have this? How many of you have that text chain with some of your buddies, maybe you served with, maybe a couple that maybe didn't serve, but it's that text chain that you may not want anybody else in the world to see, but you don't erase it either. And he was talking about it, and he said, we got this text chain. And he said, what happens is, he said, we'll be talking about family and friends or just some crap on TV. He said, but what will happen is, he said, if somebody doesn't answer or participate over a day or so, he said, that person's going to get at least 2 to 3 calls. How about you? Is there somebody you hadn't talked to in a while? Is there somebody that you know that you probably need to pick up the phone and call? Or maybe just text. How many of you know the stories and heard the stories of that person who was ready to leave this life and they got a text from somebody they haven't heard and they're still here today? Little things matter. Right now at the VA, I am talking about standards. We're reorganizing our hospital group. We're reorganizing how we do our care to our veterans. And I have told them, and I've told every our medical center director, that little things matter. Because if you're not doing it in the little things, you're not going to do it in the big things. And this is something we can't fail on. So I don't know where you come from being here. Whether you're here to find new things for your business, whether you're part of a business that's selling stuff, or whether you're here to help in some ways connected to the industry, but connected to helping veterans. One, this secretary is here to tell you that I don't send greetings by phone. I'm here to tell you that I put my money where my mouth is, and I'm standing here before you saying, I need your help. I will do all I can do to let you help. But I got to have your help too. But it's not going to be easy. And this is where we have to understand the give and take. We have to understand what's going on in people's lives. But we've also got to take the step to get others to realize that this is important. Beyond what we do, it's who we are. 17. We see people walking every day in our life, and sometimes we don't even think about it. 16. The day comes up, you do your stuff. That phone call goes unanswered. 15. 14. 13. I meant to do that yesterday. I meant to call so-and-so and tell him we're getting together tomorrow night. We want him to come. 12. 11. 10. But you know, somebody else is going to do it. Somebody else will drive them to the VA. Somebody else will make that phone call so that they'll get help. Surely somebody else has talked to Susan. 9. I know that they're fine now. 8. 7. You know, I'm so glad the VA's down the street. I'm sure the veterans are getting help. 7. 6. Well, you know, if they really need help, they would ask. If they really need help, they would go to do what they need to do. If they really needed help, they'll find what they have. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Today. 17. Not a week. Not a month. Today. There may be one today that's still here. I'm challenging each and every one of you to do whatever you can. And it may be small. It may be big. You may offer somebody a place to put a gun. You may offer somebody a place to just go have a cup of coffee. You may have a place where they can go out and go fishing or go hunting just to get away. One is still here. One can make a difference. Some of you love social media. I've seen some of your accounts. When I came to this job, I was probably one of the more visible VA secretaries there's been because I had been on Fox News, I had been in the Congress, I had been through the battles of life, and some knew me from there. So when I got there, my social media accounts were rather large. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, some that I don't even know about. And we began posting things. Stuff that I was doing, where I was at, where I was going. And all of a sudden I don't read comments typically, especially if you're in a position like mine, I would not recommend reading comments. I mean, my wife loves me and my Shih Tzu loves me and my 3 kids at least accept me. So I don't have horns, if any of you've read that. They're not there. I am homely. That's just noticeable. I'm not completely stupid. I do get up in the morning and put my own clothes on. You'd be amazed at what I'm accused of. I mean, I'm not even a child of God, and that's pretty good for a chaplain. But I started reading comments. Secretary, besides the one that said I was full of crap, they say, Secretary, I've been trying to get into my VA, and I'm having trouble filling out the forms, and I can't get in. And I'm sitting there at night, and I would see this, and I'd screenshot it, and I would send it to my staff, and I'd say, what are we going to do about this? My staff really probably looked at me and said, I don't know, what are you going to do about it? Because we never had this before. I sent it to some of our career VA employees, and they said, we've never looked at social media before. So starting about March, April, we began to put in a process. And this shows you, I'm just using this example to show you how you can do little things that can equal big results. They started monitoring my social medias and responding to them in real time. I think we're up to about 300 cases a week that we now answer off of my social media from people who comment and need help. Last year, none. But then there's the ones, some of those are getting their benefits, or somebody talked bad to me, or whatever it may be, we've helped them. But then there's the ones that I'm going to leave you with. On Thursday mornings, and if I was in D.C. today, we'd have been on a big conference room. And if you ever want to come to D.C., come see me. I'll be happy to see you. My office is open to the public. I don't know why we think that government officials are not. I'm just Doug. But if you come, you'll see a big conference room. We call it the Bradley Conference Room. And I have all of our directors. I mean, when you have 450,000 people, shockingly, we have a large room where people are in charge. And I have a screen that looks like this, and I've at least got them down now to where they have one slide. Military in the house, by the way, I'd love to ban PowerPoint if possible. But they get one slide, and they tell me where they are for that week, and we go from there, and I'll ask questions. I'm going down through there one morning a few months ago, and Linda Davis, who does our VEO, who's our veteran experience person, who is the group that actually monitors my social media. I'm rolling along, the slide comes up, and she says, sir, I have to tell you something before I finish. And I said, Linda, what's that? And I just kept watching. Her back is to me because the rest of them, I'm just watching the screen. And she said, sir, she said, last night, a gentleman sent you a goodbye letter. That got my attention. And I turned around to look. And she said, but before I go on, I want you to know he's still here. They monitored a stupid Twitter account. And somebody is still here. If this isn't any more personal for every person attending SHOT Show, it's got to be. So if we can do little things, they become big things. Big things become better things. And at the end of the day, we don't lose as many. And veterans all along will know that somebody cares. As long as I get to be in this seat, there'll not be a secretary that loves veterans more, being one of them, who cares about his employees, and who's willingly to do one thing and one thing only. You can say whatever you want to about me, but when I leave, my only goal is to say it's better, and that the VA has one purpose only, and that is to serve veterans. NSSF has partnered with us, and they're going to continue to. My challenge to each of you is, who's your one? Who's your one? If each of us have one, the 17 will get covered. God bless you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your amazing comments. I know I speak for all of us that was very insightful and impactful and much appreciated. So we appreciate that. Thank you. Bill?
Thank you, Joe. We're going to make the most of our time and go right to our great panel, and I hope that you when you hear what they have to say, that you'll be inspired to take action to help prevent suicide. And I can't say it more eloquently than the Secretary already did. We need your help, whether you're a company, organization, or individual. And so let's go for it. Joe, you want to lead us off? I know this topic is very important to you from an industry standpoint as well as personally. So.
I think what I just want to start off with just a little bit of my background and how I came to this position. I started with NSSF in 2018, but for about a decade prior to that, I was on the Board of Governors for NSSF, and for half that time, I was chairman of the Finance Committee. So from an administrative perspective, I was very familiar with the programs like the Suicide Prevention, Project Child Safe, Fix NICS, Don't Lie, but more from an academic perspective, from a budgetary perspective. So it was very analytical, and my job as a board member was to keep track of that. So it really wasn't maybe like an inch deep and a mile wide kind of thing where I had to be involved with the budgeting process, but not necessarily intimately involved with the programs. And from me personally, throughout my entire career, I was always taught and trained that you never mix personal life with business. What happens at home stays at home, and what happens at work is at work. And you don't mix the two because it's inappropriate and unacceptable, and that's how I was brought up. And many of you might think that me being here, because I'm the president and CEO of NSSF, well, I'm here because that's my role, that's my job. Now, it is my job, but it's more than that. It's become personal to me, and I want to kind of share the aha moment for me, how that occurred, when that occurred, and why it has made a difference in my life and in this particular program. In 2020, I was asked as the newly minted CEO of NSSF to give a presentation to a VA panel suicide prevention conference in San Francisco. Now, I must admit to you all that the prospect of someone representing the gun industry and going to San Francisco, not exactly a hotbed of Second Amendment love and support, was terrifying for me. But I worked with my team back in Connecticut and put together a slideshow presentation which talked about NSSF's commitment to suicide prevention and working with the VA and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And it was very, I would say, it was a nice presentation, but it was very antiseptic, it was very analytical and pretty cut and dried. Well, as I sat there waiting for my turn to speak, I listened to the stories of the people that preceded me and talking about veteran suicide and their experiences. And it was at once heartbreaking and sad, but there was also a message of hope and optimism in these comments. And I found myself getting very emotionally attached to these people that I didn't even know and didn't know me. And I thought at that point in time, my presentation is not going to be right for this crowd, or at least I need to do something. So I leaned over to Bill and I said, I'm going to go off script a little bit here. And I think he was a little nervous about that because he never knows, you give a mic to a lawyer and let him go off script, who knows what could happen. But he said, go for it. So before I started into my PowerPoint presentation, I talked a little bit, I got personal, right? For the first time in my professional career, I got personal. I talked about how in my family, we experienced suicide in my family. And I saw firsthand the devastation and frankly the stigma that suicide created in my own life and in my own family. And I talked about how I witnessed a suicide. It was January 19th, 2005. I was on a trip. I had to go to DC for a meeting, and I was waiting on the train platform, and there was a gentleman there dressed up in a suit, briefcase, ready to go to work. And I don't know why. I can't explain why he and I locked eyes. There was something something wasn't right. And there was a speeding express train coming towards the station, and while everybody was instinctively moving back, it was a very cold morning to begin with, he stood there right on the edge. And it just didn't feel right to me. And we looked at each other, and then a moment later, he was gone. And the sight and the sound, I can't explain. I had to repress that so much because I didn't know how to process it. And I never talked about it in public, never, until that day in March of 2020. okay? That became like real and real frightening to me. But the biggest reason, I think, why I'm here and doing this willingly is that both of my sons are combat veterans. One of them suffering from PTSD. And I know the stats on veteran suicide, okay? And it's terrifying to me. So if I can be here as a trusted voice to the industry that I have worked in for 40 years, then I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I'm not the expert on this panel here by any means, but I wanted to let you know that there is a time when personal and business can coincide, and this is that time. And I will leave you with a quote that I heard, and I don't remember the context exactly, but it fits perfectly with this setting and what we're doing here. And that is, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And my call to action for all of you and all the people in my industry that I have loved most of my adult life is that there is something we can do. We can work together. I learned at that conference that suicide is preventable. And that, to me, was a revelation. It never occurred to me before. I never thought of it in that context. Suicide is preventable. And those of you that don't know me well, I mean, before I became an attorney, I was a quality engineer and process control. And if a process can be tweaked, fixed, controlled, then we should do it. So I found if it's preventable, why not? Why not help prevent suicide? If it's preventable, we should do it. So my call to action to all of you here today, and spread the word amongst your colleagues and peers, is please help us do something. NSSF is out here taking a leap of faith. Maybe this panel wouldn't have been possible 5 years ago, because this subject is sensitive. This subject is personal. It's very unsettling to a lot of people. But you know what? I'm here to tell you, if I can change and if I can become an advocate for suicide prevention, I'm going to do it. And I'm asking each of you to help us. We've got materials, we've got resources. Whatever you need, we will help you. And I am so proud to be partnering with the VA and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, because what little bit I can contribute, I can't do everything, but what I can do, I will do. And I've made that commitment in front of all of you and anyone who will listen. So that's all I wanted to say. Again, I'm not the expert here. These colleagues, these are the experts, and these are people that I've grown to love. And they have accepted me from that day in March of 2020. They were so welcoming. I was frightened to go, but I came away relieved. It changed my life. It changed my worldview, and I'll never forget that. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dr. Betts.
Yeah. Joe, thank you for that. I am really proud to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Emmy Betts. I'm an emergency physician, professor of emergency medicine at University of Colorado. I really would rather not look at any rashes or do any sidebar consults later today. Maybe you could talk to Chris if you're concerned about something. But in all seriousness, it's really special to be here today. I see a lot of friendly faces in the audience of other people doing great work who also could have been up here on the panel, but a lot of new faces too, which is wonderful. So I do work in the ER in Denver, and part of the reason I'm here and do this work is because every time I have a shift, I care for people who are going through that roller coaster of life that I think we all understand, that sometimes life just gets hard, and maybe it's mental illness, but maybe it's just losing a job, losing a girlfriend, everything kind of hitting at once, maybe drinking too much. And I'm proud to work with people and help them hopefully get through those tough times. But we also know a lot of people don't seek care with us, and that's why we need to be here thinking about how we reach broad audiences outside of hospital settings, because we can't wait for people to always ask for help. I also do this work, though, because it's personal for me. I think probably it is for everyone in this room. I've lost family members. I've lost friends to suicide. We know nationally, on average, half of Americans know someone who's died by suicide. I suspect it's much higher in this room because you're here. And we know for every person who dies, it's something like 130 people are directly affected. And so we've got to start talking about this more, because it is a very common experience, unfortunately, and it's preventable. And so one of the things that Bill asked me to talk about is a little bit of what we know about the sort of the science behind why we know it's preventable, and then the ER doctor in me has to give you some specific actions, because we really like fixing things, and I always get asked, well, what do I do then? And so I have a couple thoughts on that. So First, briefly, why are we talking also about suicide specifically at a firearm show, and what is the link between firearms and suicide? So we know that when a firearm is accessible to someone in crisis, the risk of death is much higher. And that's not because guns make people suicidal. That's not what the science tells us. But it's because guns are lethal. They are supposed to be. And if someone is in that period where they're not thinking as clearly as usual, they don't see a way out, and they reach for a gun, they're not going to make it to my ER. They're going to die. And we know about 90% of the time a suicide attempt with a gun is lethal compared to other methods. And we also know that many suicide crises are actually pretty brief. There might be longstanding struggles, PTSD, depression, alcohol problems, et cetera. But we know that from the time to deciding to take action to actually a suicide attempt can be in the space of hours. So it's really about getting somebody through a high-risk period in a safe way, getting them the help they need, but also making sure that they hopefully don't have access to dangerous items while they're getting that help. So what does that mean for all of you, and what are those small steps you can take? I really think of it as there's sort of two phases, and there are so many little things you could do along the way, and any of these things would be a huge help. So the first is if somebody is going through a tough time, whether it's a customer, it's you, it's a family member, it's a friend, certainly it's about reaching out, asking, hey, what's going on? Getting that person help. 988 is the crisis hotline. It's free 24/7. That's an easy way to start. But it's also about then, during that time period, making sure that they don't have access to firearms or other lethal methods of suicide, but firearms are the ones we worry about the most because they are the most lethal. What does that mean? It's like being a designated driver. Depending on what's legal where you live, maybe you hold on to the guns for a while for somebody. Maybe you move them. If you're a retailer, maybe you offer storage for people. It's about finding voluntary ways to keep that person safe during a short time period until they're back to themselves. So it's not about taking away someone's driver's license. It's about helping them get home from the bar that night. I think, though, that we can't only do that because I think we also all know it's very difficult to actually sometimes identify when someone is going through a rough patch, because honestly, we're all pretty good at hiding things, and I think particularly service members and veterans are trained to be tough and be strong and not show what they might perceive as a weakness. And so that's where the upstream kind of messages come in, and where I'm really happy to see at the show this year a lot of emphasis on secure storage options. And as we start to recognize that's good for many reasons, for theft, for kids getting into the guns, but it also could help prevent suicide in the teenagers' friends who come over, even the veteran or the service member or the general civilian themselves, because it puts that time and space between someone and something that if they take action with a firearm, there's not going to be a second chance. So I'm thrilled to be here. I hope you hear some ideas for easy involvement. We're really proud to be working with the Defense Suicide Prevention Office, with the VA, and with NSSF on hopefully getting resources and programs out that are usable in the community. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Emmy.
Thank you,
Dr. Bartozzi, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Chris Bartozzi. I am an emergency medicine physician like Emmy Betts. However, I work in a very rural area. There are 2 degrees of separation between everybody in the county where I live. And after working in frontline services for a few decades, those 2 degrees tend to collapse into just 1. You can't go anywhere without knowing somebody. We are all truly connected, and you feel that living in a small area. But like other rural communities, we have a disproportionate rate of suicide. And that is well documented, right? Because we are good at counting dead bodies. But we don't learn how to prevent disease and death by injury by counting dead bodies. We learn by understanding why people didn't die. Prevention is kind of hard to measure based on the tools that we commonly use. Nothing happened does not show up well on a spreadsheet. There are no regression models where nothing happens is the outcome measure that you want. There are no QA pathways to monitor performance on making sure nothing happens, and it's definitely not a compelling media story. But these stories are the most important ones to tell and learn, because when it comes to suicide, nothing happened is the best possible outcome. Working in the community and not in academic practice so much, and not, we're kind of isolated a little bit. And suicide prevention can feel mysterious. And I wonder sometimes we kind of make it that way, in part because we're conditioned to expect some kind of mechanistic algorithm, something that's like proven and validated, that says, okay, you do this, then you do that, and then you can expect the outcome that you program. This is the medical model and the policy model, but it's just not realistic when you're navigating this space in real life. And here's why. One, we cannot predict, right? Even professionals who spend their careers working with high-risk populations have about a 50% accuracy in their ability to predict future violence. That's a coin toss. Suicide has no universal or uniform pathophysiology. So that's a medical term that we use to describe essentially how a problem develops in a body over time, what goes wrong, in what order, and how that leads to a bad outcome. And central to this notion is the idea there's a balance of risk factors and protective factors. The more risk factors you have, the more likely the bad outcome, the more protective, less likely, and so forth, right? But the reality is that I know people that have 20 risk factors and 2 protective factors that have never considered suicide. And I know people that have 2 risk factors and 20 protective factors that have died by suicide. And finally, as Emmy mentioned, there is no linear timeline, right? Even when you recognize that somebody may be at risk, you may not know where they are on that trajectory, or even if they're on a trajectory. Like, is this a crisis or just a bad day, and are you overreacting? So it's kind of hard to know where somebody is. And I think all this sets us up to be kind of a loaded thing, like preventing suicide. It's like a hard conversation to begin with. It's harder to talk about other people's guns. And so I think a different perspective could be helpful, something more intuitive. And I think of this as like an ecological approach, because it considers the whole person and the environment in which they live. And this helps us a little bit to see the forest for the trees, and also to see what's hiding in plain sight, which is that something we've already talked about here. Suicide is already being prevented, right? It's just not being reported, as far as I know, because it's a non-event. And so living in a smaller community that's rural and talking about suicide, you hear stories about prevention. And the more you hear, the more you begin to kind of see that there's a pattern to this. And so I've come to understand a certain model. And if you can turn on my slide. All right, I'm not a graphic designer, okay? All right. But anyway, so do you have a pointer that I can use really quick? Or?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, well, anyway, I'll stand up for a second, if you don't mind, all right? I can make a much better model. So the target on the left, that is the outcome that nobody wants, death by suicide. This is not spontaneous. It does not develop in a vacuum. It is not inevitable. It is not a passive process. This is very much an active and a conscious process, and you are the only person that can bring yourself to that conclusion. The inputs are what we call the social determinants of health. These are the variables that are responsible for the length and the quality of your life across all medical problems, whether they're physical or they're mental. So medical care, what Emmy and I do, and what your primary care doctor does, and your therapist do, this is medical care. That counts for only 20% of your health outcomes. All the rest come from your environment and how you manage them, right? So your physical, but where you live, are you isolated? Do you have transportation? Is your community safe, or do you feel threatened every time you go outside? Social and economic, are you financially secure? Or do you have to take 3 buses to get to your 2 jobs so you can make enough money to pay for the food on your table, right? Is your job reasonable or chaotic? Do you get trauma when you go to work, or do you have a life that's kind of easy, right? Health behaviors. Do you smoke? Are you active? Do you treat yourself or medicate yourself with alcohol or substances? So these are all health behaviors, but one of the most important determinants of our health overall is the quality of our relationships. Do we have people that care for us in our lives, that reach out to us on text when we're missing, right? That will show up for us when things go sideways. So these determinants all together shape the direction and the stability of that arrow. And when it comes to suicide, that is your capacity for harm, right? But in order for this trajectory to end in death, it requires a tool, some lethal means. And we're here because firearms are the most lethal means, right? This creates your opportunity for death. So to achieve the outcome of death by suicide, you have to have both the capacity for harm and the opportunity of lethal means, right? And we all understand that how a gun can be used depends entirely on how it's manufactured, whether it's a handgun, long gun, single shot, whatever, right? But how it will be used depends entirely on the health of the person holding it. And to clarify, having a gun is not the cause. Being a veteran is not a cause. Being traumatized in the healthcare system is not a cause. Being an alcoholic is not the cause, right? But together, all these things together create an environment that could lead to a lethal outcome. But it's the same environment that can disable it, right? So to prevent suicide, it's the little things. You don't need to fix everything. You just need to essentially put a little pressure, pull a lever that can essentially disrupt this trajectory so it misses its mark. So I don't know if any of you do long-distance shooting, but if you do, you already understand this, right? There are all these variables that go to set up your shot. You spend a lot of time thinking about the variables, but all it takes is wind drift. All it takes is a little bit of a gust of wind or a change in direction to throw that round off its target, right? Preventing suicide is exactly the same concept, but inverted. You want that person to miss their target. So when you think about what can I do to prevent suicide, look at that environment, right? What is setting up that shot, and what can be done to disrupt it? Can you put a little pressure here? Can you add a little support there? Right? These are small, simple actions that people can do. Create time and distance between a person's lethal means. Reach out on Twitter, have a conversation, give some support to somebody who's in a crisis. These are normal, undramatic, unheroic things that happen all the time. And when you do that, you actually add the most important protective factor, which is adding a relationship. So if suicide prevention is happening in my community with stories that I know, they're happening everywhere. We're not special in that way. And I'm sure there are people in this room that have some stories of their own or know stories where people have intervened to prevent suicide. The fastest way to normalize suicide prevention is to make it easier and more a part of our social fabric is to learn from the people who've already done it. Those are the real experts. As a society, we tend to circle our wagons around risk. We want to contain it. But that's the opposite is what we need. You need to put your arms around that risk and that family and notice something. Do something small and complete unheroic. And that is the way that we can get the best possible outcome, which is nothing happened.
Thank you, Chris. Fascinating. Jacqueline, you're up next. You're the one person here who is wearing two hats. You run a business in the industry, and you're also working with Dr. Betts as well on a program.
Yes, yeah, I'm very honored to be here, and I'm so thankful that all of you are taking time out of your busy days to pay attention to this topic because it is so important. Like Bill mentioned, I am lucky to be here wearing a couple of different hats. I co-own with my husband an indoor shooting range, retail store, and training facility just outside of Denver, Colorado. And then I also have the pleasure of working with Dr. Betts on a lethal means safety project called Pause to Protect that I'll talk about a little bit. And then I have the pleasure of serving on the board for the NSSF as well. So so many hats and such an honor to be here. When I was thinking about what to talk to you all about and how to inspire you to do the little things, I thought it would be helpful, like some of the other panelists, to recount my origin story in this work and talk about the little things that I've been able to do that I know have made a difference in my small community. My journey into suicide prevention, injury prevention, lethal means safety, all of these things started very quickly after we opened our business in Colorado. So we've been operating our range and retail store for 12 years. And both my husband and I came from business backgrounds. We did not come from the firearms industry or from a military law enforcement background. We were business people who were recreational shooters. So when we entered this space, I was floored at the suicide rates that exist amongst the community, the military community, the veteran community. I had no idea. And Much to my husband's chagrin, I'm a fixer type personality. Like, you bring me a problem, I want to fix it. I'm not going to just listen. But here was a problem that it just seemed like a Promethean task to even think about. What could I possibly do that would make any sort of difference in this space? And right about when all of that was going through my head, we're getting our operation off the ground, we had a suicide on our range. And as any small business owner knows, especially when you're starting out, that's your family, that's your home away from home. You're spending more time there than you are at home. And it was like somebody coming into my house and doing that. And just like Joe mentioned, it's taken me a really long time to talk about that in public. I felt a huge amount of responsibility for what happened. I felt like I was going to be judged, that I wasn't running my operation appropriately. But it was a really big wake-up call and showed me that I had to do something if I was going to exist in a good mental state for me in this industry. So right about then, I was introduced to Dr. Betts, and the Colorado Firearm Safety Coalition was formed, which has been such a unique set of relationships and wonderful experience for me. These are people that definitely have different political views and different professions. It's a group of ER docs, mental health professionals, other interested firearms industry community members in just the Denver and now Colorado area, where everybody puts aside the politics and all has a common goal of helping prevent injuries and deaths with firearms. So that group has really grown, and it has helped a lot of organizations, small and large, come to the table with this conversation and feel like they can make a difference. What did I do that were little things? A lot of little things, and some of them worked and some didn't. Once Dr. Betts and I started working together, we were able to basically try a bunch of different secure storage options at my store, and all with the common goal of normalizing secure storage, making it more accessible in the community, allowing people to put some time and space between very lethal means and going through a rough patch. And eventually we developed a blueprint that we've now been able to basically take on the road through a program called Pause to Protect. So pause, take a minute, create some time and space, and hopefully protect a life. And now we can help other ranges and retailers, FFLs, firearm businesses all over the US do the same type of work and see the same success and get the same community engagement and gratification out of it that we have. I'm absolutely a testament to the fact that small efforts can make an impact, and if everybody's doing a small effort using the vehicles that they have, we can make a difference with a problem that has gotten way, way too big. It's been a very positive experience for me and my business doing these small things. I mean, of course, I feel drawn to do this based on my personal experiences with suicide and injury, like many of you have. But a lot of the FFLs that I talked to initially, they want to understand, well, that I'm not doing something that's necessarily profitable. What is there for me to do? Can I make a difference? And how does this work in with my business? And I can tell you that there's a lot of good things about it other than just preventing injury. So it's programs like this have enabled me to create a better connection with my staff. We employ a lot of veterans, a lot of active duty military, a lot of people that have been touched personally by firearm injury and suicide. And I think there's a lot of data out there, articles that talk about how younger generations, especially these days, don't always care about the money that you're paying them. They want to be emotionally tied to the organization, feel like they're making a difference. And doing something like this in your community and taking care of the little things as a firearm business can create that engagement. So I guess my message is that we're all here in the firearms industry, connected to it, adjacent to it in some way, and therefore we all have resources that we can use to do little things to make a big difference.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Mike, does your mic work? Mike?
It works.
Okay.
All right. I want to thank everybody for being here today. It's awesome to see this turnout. My name is Mike Sedini, and I am the founder of Walk the Talk America. But before I begin, I want to kind of tell you my origin story. It began with nepotism. I got my job in the firearms industry by working for my family. I didn't grow up around guns. I grew up in San Francisco and New Jersey. Probably the two worst places to grow up if you're around guns, right? That helped me with what I do today. And the reason why is because when I got into the firearms industry, I was able to observe a lot. And one of the things that I had noticed was that we did not address a lot of the negative outcomes of firearms, and mostly that because it's used against us, right? But one of them was suicide. I used to have a booth at SHOT Show every year, and we used to have these nice couches. And I remember sitting with the president of my company one time, and we started to notice that every year there'd be one less person that would come hang out with us. And when we tried to figure out where was that person, we'd eventually find out that they took their life with a firearm. And one of the things that we thought was strange is that we didn't talk about it. I'm going to date myself here, but there's a movie called Twister, right? And in that movie, they talk about an F5, like a tornado. And there's a scene where they say, we don't talk about an F5. And I felt like our industry didn't want to talk about that. So the story I'm about to tell you about the president of my company is very tragic. When you think about suicide, you always think that there are signs, that you need to look for things. And I want to caution everybody here that maybe that's not the case all the time. And that's why it's so important that we tackle this ourselves as the industry, and we give tools and resources to our community, people that are in the 2A community. President of my company is named Bill Strominger. And this is the guy I was telling you about that we sat and talked about suicide. And we had a friend who took their own life, and I remember Bill saying to me, suicide is the coward's way out. So when somebody tells you that suicide is the coward's way out, that's the last person you're going to think would take their own life. Bill took his own life with one of our firearms. I used to own an importer. I imported guns from all over the world. And one day he had a bad day and he went to our office and he took his own life. And I remember the day that it happened, I had to catch a plane from New Jersey to Las Vegas. And we were playing basketball, and on my way out the door, he said, hey, did you make your reservations? Everybody in this room knows about all the shows that the industry has, whether it's distributor shows, NRA shows, SHOT Show, Great Outdoor Show. And he said, did you make your reservations for those? And I said, maybe. And he's like, I'm pissed at you. Make your reservations, because if we're not staying in the same hotel together, I'm going to kill you. That's what he said to me. So as I left him, we were making plans for the future together. Well, he had a bad day, something happened, and he took his own life. And it really messed me up. His funeral was like a who's who of the firearms industry. Some really big names. A lot of people in the room know these names, but we put him in the ground. And nobody wrote about it. Nobody talked about it. We just kept it moving, right? I live in Vegas, and everyone knows Mandalay Bay, what happened, the horrible night. We lost 59 people in that tragedy. We lose 74 people a day to suicide by firearm. We have a Mandalay Bay shooting, more than a Mandalay Bay shooting, every day. It's not the gun's fault. But there is something we can do about it. I want to tell you a brief story about my journey. So when I first got into this, I thought I was going to change the world, stop mass shootings. I remember reaching out to the mental health community to find out how we could work together on the things we agree upon instead of getting caught up in the fight. And I got to be honest, I kind of wanted to big pharma my way out of it. I thought if I could just raise money from the firearms industry, we could hand it over to behavioral health, we'd be heroes. When I realized that they don't have the answers, I had to look inside of the community and the industry to figure out what we can do. And one of the things Walk the Talk America does is we offer free and anonymous mental health screenings. And in the beginning, I remember making a decision that I wanted to put free and anonymous mental health screenings in the boxes of all my manufacturers' firearms. I represented 4 lines outside of the United States. Thank God I had foreign manufacturers, because I'm not sure if they were American, they would have let me put a free and anonymous mental health screening in the box. But I remember having a conversation with my office, and I said, I really want to do this because I want our customers to be able to check on themselves without fear of consequence. And I got to be honest, I didn't know if the NSSF was going to come after me. I didn't know if the NRA was going to get angry. I didn't know if our customers were going to get angry that that was in there, because, you know, when we think of guns and mental health, we usually think people are coming after our rights and restriction. But one of the coolest things, and the reason why I tell you this is because sometimes you got to take a chance. Sometimes you got to just do something. It was completely opposite of what I thought could happen. We were getting customers who were buying a Bursa and saying, I bought this gun, and it came with this card in the box that led to the free and anonymous mental health screenings. And I just want to thank you. We had people calling our office talking about suicide loss or what they went through. We were not equipped to handle that. We did not think that through, right? Because we're not therapists, we're a gun company. But that's when it really hit me that we need this for our community. Those are our customers, those are our people, those are the people that are in our community that we love, that trust us with their life and their family's life when they purchase our products. You can do something. All of us can do something. Talking about it doesn't mean that you're going to inspire people to do it. They're doing it. And the firearms industry, believe it or not, can be the leaders in this space when it comes to suicide prevention and mental health. We don't need any hero to save us. We can do it ourselves. And it starts by being creative. There's somebody in the crowd right now named Gala True with the Armory Project that I want to point out that was so forward-thinking that she had a group of gun stores in Louisiana to offer safe storage, and the issue that a lot of stores had was the liability of giving a gun back too soon. You know, I don't want to take that on. What if somebody does something horrific? Well, there's an obstacle, and Gala was like, I'm going to go around it, and she goes out and makes legislation that removes that penalty to a gun shop if they do give a gun back too soon for trying to do the right thing. So I want to leave you with, don't let data, don't let your fear, don't let your legal, I know Larry's probably like, what? Don't let your legal get in the way of saving a life, because these are our people. They're our customers with our product, and we can help them. So thank you for showing up today and hearing all of our stories.
We do have some time for questions, about 4 minutes or so. And if anyone has questions, please ask away. Yeah.
Will you go on mic or no?
Yes, please.
Somebody I just met in line earlier. My name is Todd Dillon. I'm the president of a veterans nonprofit, a Veterans Sportsmen's Association. I was a World Trade Center responder for the military, did 2 years in Afghanistan, 6 months in Iraq. Got close to retirement around 2016 or so. My girlfriend at the time, then wife, got me to join a civilian gun club, which I reluctantly did. Immediately put in charge of putting together the Veterans Dinner program every year. I think they had like 4 people coming out at the time. And basically, I was tasked for trying to put together veterans programs at the gun club. And when I started looking into it on the civilian side, I wasn't seeing very much either in the legacy organizations like VFW, DAV, American Legion, for younger veterans. They just didn't offer anything. If you want to come to the bar, tell your war stories, great, we got that. If you want to go do firearms training, if you want to do any kind of sporting stuff, we just don't offer that. So myself, some other combat veterans, regular veterans, and some NRA instructors, we got together, formed a nonprofit, started running a lot of shooting training events. We just started doing a machine gun shoot last year, and I knew people that had killed themselves both in the military and also veterans outside of the military. So we came here 3 years ago, did a breakout session with the VA. I think there was 12 of us in the room, 9 of them were with my organization, and I was basically looking to see if anybody in the firearms industry was out trying to promote veteran suicide through the perspective of firearms instruction or the firearms industry, because I just wasn't finding it anywhere. I was finding resources on the VA side, suicide prevention, but not in concert with firearms instruction. So I guess my question is the NSSF gonna put out something like Project Child Safe or some sort of promotional program that veterans organizations like ourselves that also do firearms instruction can then promote to veterans that we work with, interact with, that also has to do with firearms?
So our partner, NSSF's partner in suicide prevention, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, last year developed an instructor module so instructors could insert these slides and information into their classes that they offer. And I would encourage you to take a look at that.
Well,
it's at afsp.org/firearms, or just give me a shout. I know also there are some states that have been working on the similar type of modules, and I know in Connecticut, for example, because I'm a resident there and know what they're up to, that they are encouraging instructors to use that similar module in classes, where classes are mandatory to get your concealed carry permit. So
I would add to that how times have changed. About 4 or 5 years ago, we floated the idea of having instructor modules, and it was talk to the hand kind of thing. People are spooky about this.
yes, very much.
But because I think of our trusted message, us being a messenger or maybe an intermediary in some ways, this project, this module is now being accepted and being taken in by instructors and used. So it's, nothing, it happens overnight, but the fact is, like I said earlier, if 5 years ago, we probably wouldn't be able to have a session like this. So I'm very proud that we are at the leading edge of being able to start to move that program forward and now being accepted in many circles. So again, nothing done overnight, but I'm very happy to see we are making progress.
I think we have time.
Thank you.
We have time for one more.
Dr. Lemley is.
Can you answer that, anything about gun storage check week? Because I think that overlaps with the question.
Let me first of all get through to some websites and so forth. So Gun Storage Check Week is a new program from NSSF. Information is at gunstoragecheck.org, and it runs twice a year. June 1 to 7 and September 1 to 7. June is National Safety Month. September is National Suicide Prevention Month. It has a very simple ask of gun owners. It is check your storage and make sure it's secure. It sort of puts the emphasis on gun owners. We don't preach to them how to do it, but we think if they receive a reminder and their gun is on top of a refrigerator or in a closet somewhere, they understand that that is not secure storage, and to take steps to make sure that there's not unwanted access to that firearm. It was received very well. About 1,300 companies participated in pushing out messages for it last year, 2025, and it really took off very fast, even though it's a new program. So that, I think, is something that a club or a firearms retailer or any other company or individual can get behind. I think we are done. Thank you, everyone, for showing up.
Thank you very much.